Hello, everyone. I am Sophronia Scott, Director of the Alma College MFA in Creative Writing, and welcome to the novel and the MFA. So this is kind of a long-form version of a video, a Faculty Friday video that you may have seen us do in the past, but this is going to take a little longer because we feel that this is a discussion that may be helpful for writers who are working on novels and are interested in pursuing a low residency MFA in creative writing. I have with me here today Robert Vivian, who is on our faculty, who is a wonderful multi-genre writer himself. And the idea for this recording came about because we were having this conversation about whether or not one can pursue a novel in the MFA, especially in the workshop setting. And I decided that it would be helpful, I'm thinking, for everyone listening in to get to hear this conversation. And it will be a conversation, and hopefully you will get some tips along the way about what may or may not help. Maybe you'll decide that this isn't the thing for you to do, but let's see. So thank you, Bob, for joining me here today for this conversation.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Froni. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to talking about this important issue and approaching it from all kinds of different perspectives for people to just maybe consider.
Yeah. So what would you say is the main challenge of thinking about a novel in the MFA setting? Like, what is it that someone may be wrongly thinking when they come to it?
Well, I've been teaching almost 30 years now, and sometimes when people hear that you teach writing, they'll say, "Oh, I have an idea for a novel or idea for," and I've come to question that, and that an idea maybe not be sufficiently powerful and mysterious enough for a novel. But if someone were to come to me and say, "I have a vision for a novel," I'd say, okay, that's a different deal entirely.
Yeah.
So, as we were talking before, Froni, my own lived experience as a novelist is when I'm working on a new novel, I do not tell anyone about it until I'm at least 100 pages into it, because I just feel that it has to work through the subconscious. I have to sit with it. It has to tell me where to go, and I don't need any outside input for a certain point. Yeah. So that's when we were talking about the workshop is designed to give input right away. Mm-hmm. So as a mentor, that's my a thought on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to me, in thinking about a novel in that way, right, to me that's already sophisticated thinking, that there is a vision that you're trying to bring forth in the world, and it's something that you're nurturing along, right? So in my mind, a person pursuing an MFA may not even know how to come to the novel in that way. They may still be in that, oh, I have an idea thing, and it's an idea. Or they're coming to the program with 400 pages of something that they've already written, which is not helpful either, right? It seems to me that coming to the MFA is about learning about the craft, right? Understanding how to wield that craft. And to me, developing a novel is not just about the novel, it's about learning how to work with ideas and how to develop that into a long form piece. So, go on.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just thinking that what a program like Alma's can do is create space and support for someone to do a deep dive exploration. So just out of privacy, I'll call her Pam. I worked with a novelist last semester, and I said, Pam, she said, I'm just starting this. And I'm okay, that's wonderful. It might be too early for feedback from me because you need to sit with your work and just go deeper and deeper and deeper. So my commentary tends to be respectful of that I don't want to say, oh, take the novel this way. That's really for her and the work to decide. But I can offer her questions that may be helpful, or other artistic examples to consider while she's composing. August Wilson, listen to blues as he was writing plays. James Baldwin, Go Tell It on the Mountain, same thing. He's listening to Bessie Smith. So these other art forms could, in an oblique way, inform the soundtrack of the novel in question. And that's better than any feedback I could ever give, I think.
Okay, so is that saying, so that sounds like a novel in the course of a term. And I think it depends on the advisor, right? That there are different expectations when you're working on a novel with an advisor. So, for example, because you are generating new work. So this is not about, this is why I'm saying that it's not good to come to the MFA with the 400 pages that you've already written, because this is about generating new work, and it's about learning about craft as you're doing that, right? So it sounds like there has to be an agreement with the advisor. If you are working on a novel in a term, there has to be an agreement about what the feedback is going to look like, and also what's going to be expected in terms of what's being generated and what the advisor can read, right? So it's not like you're going to generate 100 pages and expect the advisor to give substantial feedback on that, right? Now, but I'm assuming, though, there has to be a discussion about storytelling. And again, this goes back to craft, because to me, usually the idea is people come to workshop with short stories, and that those are easier to work with because they're all encompassed. It's one piece. As a writer, I feel that strong chapters in novels can be like short stories, right? There is one thing that happens that drives the story forward. There's something that happens, some aspect of it, right? So it seems to me that there has to be some focus or discussion on how on what's happening in any given chapter.
Yeah, my vision that I sometimes share with when I'm working with writers is for me, a novel is like a city buried at the bottom of the ocean. And the writer's task is to go just a little deeper each day until the city comes into view in greater clarity. Mm-hmm. But it's a vertical engagement of going down, 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 down into the novel. And I always think of Rumi at this: you are the only faithful student you have. Have all the others leave eventually. Have you been making yourself shallow while making others eminent? Just remember, when you're in union, there's no fear that you'll be drained. And that poem is about going deeper into something. So I guess I feel with that example of Pam from last semester, it's, yeah, Pam, just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's a weird kind of, so that's, in a roundabout way, Froni, that's my image of what a novel is that it's a deep dive. Mm-hmm. How that relates to storytelling, because you're a much better storyteller than I am. The novels I write are not necessarily linear or plot driven. And so thinking about a potential advisor, I might not be a good fit in that regard. and you would be fantastic, right? But if a writer were working on a collection of voices a la As I Lay Dying, which is driven by all these different monologues, okay, then I could help someone with that because that's how I have an affinity for that kind of voice-driven work. So it's really, I think, for prospective students, it's really just having a very honest conversation with a potential advisor on his or her or their style of advising. So what I'm expressing today is not helpful for everyone by any means, and that's okay. That's totally okay. So
Yeah, I think the student also has to know where they are. So a first-term student, for example, probably wouldn't understand what in the world you're talking about, right?
I don't even understand. Yeah,
what it is to go deeper. And I would even suggest, and in this I'll pull from my own experience, that when I was an MFA student, I spent my first term writing short stories, like knowing that I had a book in mind, but knowing that I wanted to start with the storytelling. That can I, what does it mean to craft a character? What does it mean to move a plot forward? Thinking about voice, thinking about setting, just the basics, so to speak, right? Because I felt that if I didn't have that under my belt, so to speak, then it was going to be a frustrating thing after that for me to leap into a book and then just flail about, right? So
yeah, I think part of it too is like my background is in playwriting. So when I first wrote my first novel, it could have been a play. It just happened to be in a book, but it could be recited on stage. So this is just to say that we all come at this from our own unique personal angle, which is beautiful. Yeah, so I'll leave off there.
So then if we take something into workshop, right, I think, so we're talking about having a clear conversation between the student and the advisor, but I think the student also has to have a clear understanding of what they're bringing into workshop and a certain understanding within themselves of the expectations, right? So I wouldn't, to me, it would be to present something in workshop that doesn't need a lot of explaining. Of course, you would provide the context, but the student would have to come into workshop with very specific questions for themselves. You can't expect someone to say, oh, do you like this character, if they're not, if the character changes like halfway through the book, right? So there have to be, to me, specific questions that you come to having to do with craft that can be understood in the reading of this one chapter, for example, as one would with a short story. So I think that the student would need to give themselves that preparation, and even that chance, also giving classmates that chance to give them the best feedback possible.
I like that. There's a concept from a particular kind of photography, and it's called a holon, HOLON. And basically, it means that no matter how finely you cut up a negative, it still reflects the whole. So I'm thinking maybe I haven't thought of it in those terms, but you're right. Like a chapter of a novel is in and of itself a distinct entity, but like a holon, it will invariably reflect the entire work.
Yes.
So that's something for me to really reflect on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that also brings it back to a sense of vision, right? This helps the student think in terms of the vision of the novel as a whole, right? And that there is something that they're trying to express, not just in plot points, but in tone, right? And feeling. So
I would even say that if people are interested in this whole idea, what is this guy talking about in terms of vision? Black Elk Speaks would be a seminal text to consult about what does a vision mean. And in his sense, it was a unbelievably beautiful but tragic view of his people and what was going to happen to them. But that vision that happened to him was a, I don't know how else to put it. It was a spiritual experience. And so, and I'm not talking about any particular denomination or religion, but for novelists to think about their vision in that way as well.
Okay. And I would offer, and I will offer, I'm going to give a little further explanation. So to bring this into our conversation, he is told, Black Elk is told that his vision must be presented to the people, right? That it's a vision is that important, that you share it with the people, and they even, once he did that, they even acted out the vision, right? So I think that's important for a novelist to think about, because that takes you away from that sense of, oh, message, right? I have something to say. But with the vision, a vision incorporates others, right? And if you present a vision, others will want to be a part of it, right? So I think that's a wonderful way to think about working on a novel.
Yeah, it's maybe, and I don't know, I'm not wise enough to discern. This may be somewhat countercultural at our current historical time. I was just talking with my intro to creative writing class yesterday about AI, and we had a fantastic discussion. And yeah, so the human vision, to me, Black Elk, different. These are sacred things, and they should. And at least as an advisor in our program, I honor these to the absolute. So I will constantly, Pam, just this is as far as we went for a couple packets. I would read everything and I would give extensive combat, but it'd be very oblique, out of respect for her deep dive and discovery of that vision. So yeah, it's not linear. It's not, oh, well, you do this and then you do this and then you do this, and at least that's not been my own experience as a writer. But I mean, didn't you worked on a novel at VCFA with Brett, didn't you?
Well, Brett was actually at the end point of it. So I actually developed the first draft with Ellen. So that was in my second term. So so Brett was the one coming to it once this thing was already like pretty much not almost done, because I was still writing things, but yeah, the novel was well on its way. So and at that point, it was finishing my creative thesis, because it was my creative thesis. So he was looking at it as that as well. So he was challenging me, on many aspects of it, but coming to it, it really was about the vision and about the feel of it, and especially in terms of music, right? He's very well versed in jazz, and he's very well versed in baseball, right? So he knew that sense of what those pieces meant to the novel, right? And was able to bring that to it.
I think the key phrase is well on its way.
Yes. Yeah.
If I sense and have a conversation with the writer that the novel is well on its way, then okay, here comes some feedback and some ideas, but it has to reach that point first.
Yes. Yeah.
And in my view, only the writer can discover this. Yeah. No advisor. This is what's so beautiful about this artistic journey, is the writer has to find it herself. Mm-hmm. And then when she finds it, then I can and then I can honor and say, okay, this is her vision. Okay, now we can talk about these things.
Yes.
But until that point, I just feel really apprehensive about giving feedback to early novel in progress. Yeah. But some novelists may need that early feedback. So, and that's great too.
Now, that sounds like that goes against what we were just saying about not coming to the MFA with a novel already in progress, though. Now, what would the difference be with that?
Oh, if they came to residency without having written a novel at all?
No. Remember we were saying that it's not helpful to come into the MFA with like 400 pages already written, right? But what you were just saying sounds like you're going against that, saying that, well, I can get feedback on something that's already written.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this kind of lends itself to all kinds of contradictory responses. I don't think, I mean, one must embrace paradox in this process. the people say who come to residency, they have never written a novel. They would, a generative exploratory workshop could really help them. Those who have that 400 pages and they have their vision, a traditional workshop feedback might be good for that person. So I don't think it's, I don't think there's one way to approach this. I mean,
it depends. We'll have to say it depends in all cases, right? Because I've also seen instances where someone is starting the program with something already written, 400 pages, but it is all over the place, right? In terms of, like, you can see all of the things that the writer, all of the craft that the writer does not know, right? And does not understand. And it would probably, and I'm not sure it would be productive because then it becomes all about fixing that novel. And I'm not sure that that's a good learning process for the student. It seems like, to me, it's like, okay, let's put this aside for at least a term, maybe a term, while you work on the craft, right? And maybe writing new things to help you work on the craft, and then come back to that.
It's in Robert Olin Butler's book, From Where You Dream. I think it's in the introduction where he says, even with MFA students from University of Iowa, the hardest thing I have to do to convince them is that art does not come from your intellect. It comes from the place where you dream. And so that's a little weird for some people to think about, I know. But I think it's still true. But I know at one point, Iowa's Writers Workshop said in their mission statement, we do not believe that creative writing can be taught, but it can be encouraged and nurtured. And I think of that as, and especially for the novel. Again, that's just my own lived experience, that it was sitting with that vision day after day in a very quiet, private way for a fairly long time. It's like, I don't know what the analogy is, but it's letting it incubate in the dark, in the quiet, or rushing it out to the daylight prematurely. And so it's, you can see how clumsy I am in terms of trying to describe this, because it's really mysterious.
But I think that's why, and this is going to sound strange, I feel like a student has to feel their way through their MFA work and studies, right? But you have to be hugely aware, right, of to me, you're feeling your way through that dream, but there's also a point where you realize that there are points where it's like, okay, I'm stuck, and stuck because there's something that you don't know how to do. Like, we tend to think of stuck as writer's block, but I feel that being stuck is because there's something that you just don't know how to do it, right? And that's where reading comes in. That's where, you know, a good advisor can come in. It's like, okay, if this is what you're trying to do, you know, read this, and maybe that will help you through that fog, right? But I just feel that there has to be a certain level of awareness of, as you write, that it's there. I mean, I've always thought of it as like magic, right? And I'm talking about Harry Potter kind of magic. That in Harry Potter, magic doesn't happen just because you say a magic word and wield the wand. And I keep a wand on my desk to remind me of these things. The best wizards and witches know that the magic is based on something within, of specific power, a specific memory of love, of support, of happiness, and you draw on these things to bring out this magic. But you have to learn how to do that. If you don't even know that that's inside of you, how can you draw on it, right? So, and some writers do it accidentally. Some do it by instinct. But if they can be shown how to draw upon something intentionally, so that they create intentionally, so they can wield the wand with intention, right? Then the experience becomes something totally different. Right?
Yes. The philosopher Gaston Bachelard once said that the germ of every poem is an excess of childhood. So when people get stuck in their novels, I say, go back to memory. Because sometimes going back is a way to propel oneself forward, another paradox. So, yeah, that interiority that you referred to, Froni, like Clarice Lispector, I've never seen anyone. And it's her, well, I could go off on a tangent on her work, but what she does exceedingly well is she knows how to go deeper and how to go back. And there's this marvelous kind of spiraling quality to this. A lot of people are taught different, dramatic arcs. Well, the Aristotelian, rising action, climax, falling action. And so that's another thing for a writer to consider, is not just the vision, but how to put this, the kind of architecture or geometry you see of a given work. Does it spin? Is it linear? Does it revolve around a key event? Does it spiral out? And so these are, I think, in the early composing process, these could be helpful questions for a writer to consider. And I love going on that part of the journey with them. What's the shape of your novel right now? Is it a castle? Is it a pool?
Yeah. And is it plot driven?
Exactly. Yeah.
It may not be. A Clarice Lispector book, even though they try to put a description right on the back of that book, her novels just don't have that kind of shape.
It's what Flannery O'Connor said. The only proper response to the question, what is this book about, is to read it for yourself.
Yes.
But we live in a world, and I'm not of marketing and pitching, and these are good things. These are what writers need to do often, right? So, but the work itself, in my view, if you can say what a book is about easily, I don't know if it's a great book. But that's just maybe I'm a snob. I don't know. But what is Agua Viva about? Life. It's just being alive. It's so.
I must say these are challenging thoughts for me because as I'm working on a new novel right now. So I don't know. That's interesting.
It is. Yeah, I don't know what I'm working on, but that's okay. It's always a small miracle to me how you go from that to a deeper sense of vision, and then seeing the work all the way through, whatever its fate, is a very difficult but beautiful process, and a sacred one, I would add. Very sacred. Yeah.
So it sounds like a student would need to hold things lightly, right? In terms of both in terms of the writing, in terms of being in workshop, of learning to see what feedback is helpful, to understand what feedback is helpful, but also knowing what to let go of, because only only the student knows the vision of what they're trying to do.
I love that. There's a story about Beckett was Joyce's secretary when he was going blind, and Joyce was dictating a novel to Beckett in their Paris apartment. Someone knocks on the door. They talk to this person for 20 minutes, and person leaves, and Joyce turns to Beckett and says, "Put that in the novel." I think of that, of holding things lightly. I mean, to be that radically open to, it's like, of course he was a genius, but maybe that part of his genius was being so radically open to all kinds of different influences that weren't necessarily on his artistic radar screen at the time of writing.
Yeah. Okay, so I will share this because this has happened in the course of this conversation, right? That I told you I'm working on a novel, and you mentioned earlier about As I Lay Dying, and about how those pieces are a series of monologues, and how, and you started off as a playwright, and I'm sitting here, and all of this is processing in my head, thinking about the thing that I'm working on. And in my novel, right, I have three main characters, and it has been something gnawing at me. I've been trying to write this as I normally would, a straightforward plot-driven thing, but it occurred to me that maybe the thing that I'm wanting to do speaks to a play, right? One of my favorite plays in the whole world is a play called The Faith Healer, written by Brian Friel, and that play is just monologues by three characters. And I've been thinking, could I do that? Could I do that with my play, with my novel? Maybe my novel wants to be that. And that was just a thought in my head. And now you have brought it to me without even realizing it. You've given me a novel that has already done that, As I Lay Dying. And you're giving me like, oh, wait, I guess I can do this. And see how suddenly there's affirmation, right? And it's given me a line to start exploring that is different, right? So,
but that just speaks to the indirect nature of these things. Like, I didn't know we were going to talk about this either. But this is what another incredibly rich part of the low res experience is. You have conversations like this that give you new impulses for your work to pursue.
yes.
I mean, that might be the entire strength of a program like this, is that you are talking with people who love the arts, who love writing, who want to help you. That help just may not be the traditional workshop. This is wrong, this is right, fix this, fix that. It just might be way more indirect.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful, I think. So.
I agree. because there are things as creative as one can be, and you as diligent as you can be sitting there and doing the writing, we just don't have access to all of the knowledge in the world and everything that's possible, and it's just, we can't hold it, right? You know, I haven't read everything, you haven't read everything, or even if one has, you can't make the connections necessarily, or you know, the connections that I make wouldn't be the connections that you make. So that's the wonder of being in an artistic community, is that you can find these connections.
Oh, absolutely. Because people, and this is beautiful, people, we all see things differently, and we can share those differences with other people to
Yeah.
to help them on their own artistic journey.
Yes.
And that's what a great privilege to do that.
You know, I'm learning, and I'm reading the work of David Joy right now. He's a novelist from North Carolina, and I'm going to be interviewing him soon. And I came across in his novel the line that held us, these words: empathy's not standing over a hole, looking down and saying you understand. Empathy is having been in that hole yourself. And I was like, whoa. That's, and I'm, because I'm constantly thinking about empathy, especially in terms of creating the other, right, in terms of writing other characters. But empathy, you're more likely to encounter others who've been down the hole, right? And so, and to be in the fray yourself, like, just, it gives you an opportunity to develop that empathy more and more and more, which I think is so key to powerful writing.
Oh, absolutely. And that hole that you mentioned is that's the vertical engagement. It's
Mm.
just is everywhere. It's a, you know, I'm forgetting, there's certain wells in Ireland that are considered sacred. And I always think, oh, that's like writing a novel. You're going down into a well of some kind.
Yeah.
You know, and John Gardner talks about this, and you know, entering the fictive dream, and then you have Robert Wolin. But these great teachers, they say the same thing over and over again, you know, and so yeah. But the whole, the buried city at the bottom of the ocean, maybe it really is kind of going down into something very, very deeply.
And being prepared for it, right? So, because in the MFA realm, right, like you said, the student has to have a certain understanding about that, the advisor, right, and going into workshop, it just feels like the student has to be hyper aware in a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, Annie Dillard, one of my favorite quotes: you have to learn everything about writing, then when you sit down at the desk, you have to forget all of it. So it's a very paradoxical. And I think the other is you see different models for novels because of exposure to other serious readers and writers. And that's gold. I mean, that's so helpful.
Yeah. I'm saying this for our listeners, that you, each term, when you're working on your study plan, you collaborate with your advisor to come up with a list, a reading list for the term. And this is where you'll discover books that you may not have thought to have read before, and you'll bring your own ideas as well. But the reading list is, you're going to read way more than you'd ever have before, and also work on an annotated bibliography each term, so that you know you can keep track of what you've read and make sense of it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful model for learning and discovery and support and inspiration, but also struggle too. You know,
Okay. So I'm hoping that with this conversation that we've helped the listeners of this video to figure out that that there is some way to work their way through a novel in an MFA program. It may not be easy, but hopefully we've given them some ideas about how it can be done.
I hope so.
Okay. Well, Bob, thank you so much for taking this time with me to have this conversation. I hugely appreciate it.
Thank you, Froni, for everything. Thank you.
All right, so I will see you again in class very soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.